Some miracles happen with sleight of hand. When Ryan Reynolds walked onto the Tonight Show stage with that trademark smirk and effortless charm that had made him Hollywood's most beloved smart aleck, nobody expected him to reveal the most heartbreaking chapter of his private mission. Jimmy Fallon had planned a witty interview about Ryan's latest superhero project. The audience was ready for the razor-sharp humor and playful banter that always came with a Ryan Reynolds appearance. But what Ryan was about to confess would silence Studio 6B and prove that sometimes the greatest magic isn't making things disappear, it's making joy appear in places where hope has already vanished. The cameras were rolling. The audience was already laughing at Ryan's opening jokes, and then he spoke 12 words that changed everything. Laughter should be their last memory, not pain or fear or sadness. What came next wasn't just television. It was a revelation about mortality, wonder, and the sacred responsibility of ensuring that dying children remember magic instead of medicine in their final moments. Ryan Reynolds had always been known for his quick wit and emotional armor, the actor who deflected serious moments with perfectly timed jokes, who turned vulnerability into punchlines before anyone could see the pain underneath. But what audiences didn't know was that Ryan's compulsive need to make people laugh had been shaped by his own childhood experience watching his younger sister Emma battle leukemia, and that trauma had awakened a calling to ensure that no child would face death without experiencing the pure wonder that only magic could provide. The Last Laugh magic shows had begun 10 years earlier, during the anniversary period of Emma's death, when Ryan was struggling with survivor's guilt and questioning whether his career making people laugh actually mattered when children were dying in hospital beds across the world. After volunteering at a children's cancer ward and witnessing the stark reality of pediatric terminal illness, Ryan had been devastated by how medical treatment had consumed these children's final months, leaving little room for joy, wonder, or childhood magic. I walked through that cancer ward and saw kids who looked like my sister Emma during her worst days, Ryan later explained. Bald from chemotherapy, so thin they looked fragile, connected to machines that kept them alive while their bodies failed them. But what broke my heart wasn't their illness. It was seeing how their childhood had been completely consumed by medical procedures, pain management, and adult conversations about death. Pediatric terminal cancer affects roughly 16,000 children annually in the United States, with many facing months or years of aggressive treatments that often fail to save their lives while severely impacting their quality of life. These children frequently spend their final months in sterile hospital environments where medical necessity takes the precedence over childhood joy, leaving little space for the wonder and magic that should define young lives. Emma died when she was 8, Ryan said quietly. Her last 2 years were consumed by hospitals, chemotherapy, surgeries, and conversations about death that no child should have to understand. I kept thinking that she deserved to remember magic tricks and laughter, not just needles and nausea. Ryan's sister Emma had been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at age 6. Despite 2 years of aggressive treatment, including bone marrow transplants and experimental therapies, Emma's cancer had proven resistant to all interventions. Ryan, then 14, had watched his little sister's transformation from a vibrant, giggling child into a frail patient whose world revolved around medical appointments and pain management. Emma used to love magic tricks, Ryan remembered. Before she got sick, I would do these terrible amateur magic shows for her, making coins disappear behind her ears, pulling stuffed animals out of pillowcases. She would laugh so hard she'd fall over. But during her treatment, there was no room for magic, just medicine, and medicine that wasn't even working. The inspiration to bring magic to dying children had come during a conversation with a pediatric oncologist who mentioned how difficult it was to maintain hope and wonder for terminal patients whose remaining time was measured in weeks or months rather than years. Um, She told me that these kids often know they're dying before anyone tells them officially, Ryan recalled. They're incredibly intuitive about their bodies and their prognosis. But what she said next changed everything. She said that dying children still crave wonder, still want to believe in magic, still deserve to laugh until their last breath. Working with child life specialists and pediatric hospice organizations, Ryan had developed an approach that brought professional quality magic shows directly to the bedsides of children with terminal diagnoses, creating moments of pure wonder that existed outside the medical reality of their situations. These aren't hospital entertainment programs or therapy sessions, Ryan emphasized. These are real magic shows performed for audiences of one or two children who are facing death. The goal isn't to cure them or make them forget they're dying. It's to give them experiences of pure joy that have nothing to do with their illness. Over 10 years, Ryan's Last Laugh Magic program had reached 86 terminally ill children, ranging from age 3 to 17. Each show was personalized based on the child's interests, energy level, and medical condition, with performances adapted for bedside delivery when children were too weak to sit up or attend group activities. I performed for this 5-year-old boy named Lucas, who had brain cancer, Ryan remembered, his voice becoming tender. Lucas couldn't speak anymore because of where his tumor was located, but he could still smile and laugh. I spent an hour doing magic tricks right next to his hospital bed, and every time I made something appear or disappear, Lucas would smile this incredible smile that lit up his whole face. The magic shows incorporated techniques specifically chosen for their ability to create wonder despite medical constraints. Close-up magic that could be performed in hospital beds, illusions that worked even when children had limited mobility, and interactive tricks that allowed dying children to participate in creating magic rather than just observing it. The kids love being part of the magic, Ryan explained. Even when they're very sick, they want to help make the tricks work. There's something powerful about a dying child being the one who makes a coin appear or helps a dove materialize from thin air. For those moments, they're not patients, they're magicians. The approach worked because it acknowledged the reality of terminal illness without being defined by it, creating space where dying children could experience wonder, agency, and joy that existed independently from their medical conditions. I worked with this 12-year-old girl named Sophia who had been given weeks to live, Ryan shared with obvious emotion. Sophia was so weak she could barely keep her eyes open, but when I started the magic show, she became completely alert and engaged. For 45 minutes, Sophia forgot she was dying and remembered she was still a kid who loved surprises. The most profound moments came when children who had accepted their approaching death discovered that they could still experience joy, wonder, and laughter that made their remaining time feel precious rather than just painful. Sophia's mom told me later that it was the first time in months she had seen her daughter genuinely happy. Ryan said, Sophia died 3 weeks later, but her mom said she kept talking about the magic show right until the end. She wanted to know how the tricks worked, whether real magic existed, whether she might see more magic wherever she was going. Several families had reported that Ryan's magic shows had transformed their children's final weeks or months, providing joyful memories that coexisted with the grief of approaching loss rather than being overwhelmed by it. I got a letter from Lucas's parents 6 months after he died, Ryan shared with tears in his eyes. They said that during Lucas's last week, when he was mostly unconscious, he would sometimes smile in his sleep and move his hands like he was doing magic tricks. They believed he was dreaming about the show, that magic had given him happy dreams even when he was dying. Tonight's appearance on The Tonight Show was supposed to focus on Ryan's latest action comedy, which featured themes of heroism, family loyalty, and finding humor in difficult circumstances. Jimmy had planned to discuss the film's stunts and one-liners, maybe explore Ryan's approach to balancing comedy with emotional depth, definitely tap into the playful energy that made him such an entertaining guest. The interview had started with Ryan's characteristic wit and charm. He had shared funny anecdotes from filming, demonstrated his quick comeback skills, and had the audience laughing with his perfectly timed observations about Hollywood life and family responsibilities. But when Jimmy asked about what heroism meant to Ryan in real life and whether he'd encountered situations where his ability to entertain had served a deeper purpose, something shifted in Ryan's demeanor. The question had been meant to explore his personal philosophy, but it had touched on something much more sacred that Ryan had been considering sharing publicly for the first time. "You know, Jimmy," Ryan said, his usual rapid-fire delivery slowing considerably, "the most important performances I've ever given weren't in movies or on stages. They were magic shows for kids who were running out of time to believe in magic." The audience grew quieter, sensing that Ryan was moving into territory that was more personal and serious than his typical comedic persona allowed. "That sounds incredibly meaningful," Jimmy said with genuine curiosity, clearly moved by the shift in Ryan's tone. Ryan was quiet for a moment, his characteristic smirk replaced by an expression of profound vulnerability. "My sister Emma died of leukemia when she was 8. I was 14, and I watched this amazing little girl disappear into medical procedures and pain management until there was no room left for wonder or childhood joy." The studio fell completely silent. This level of personal revelation was unexpected from someone known for emotional deflection through humor. "I'm so sorry, Ryan," Jimmy said softly, clearly moved by this glimpse into Ryan's family tragedy. Ryan's eyes filled with tears, a sight that was particularly powerful coming from someone who had built a career on never letting anyone see him vulnerable. "Emma loved magic tricks. Before she got sick, I would do these terrible amateur shows for her, and she would laugh like it was the most amazing thing she'd ever seen. But during her treatment, there was no space for magic, just medicine that wasn't even working." The audience was completely silent now, witnessing a side of Ryan Reynolds that transcended his comedic persona, the raw grief of someone whose calling had been shaped by profound childhood loss. "Jimmy, can I tell you about something that's become the most important work of my life?" Ryan asked, his voice growing stronger despite his tears. "Of course," Jimmy replied, clearly understanding that something sacred was being shared. Ryan took a deep breath and spoke directly to the camera. "For 10 years, I've been performing magic shows for terminally ill children, 86 kids who are facing death, giving them moments of pure wonder that exist outside their medical reality." Jimmy's expression changed completely as he grasped what Ryan was describing. "Ryan, you're doing magic shows for dying children?" "I'm making sure that kids who are running out of time still get to experience magic before they die," Ryan replied with quiet conviction. "These children deserve to remember laughter and wonder, not just hospitals and pain. Magic gives them something beautiful to hold on to in their final weeks or months." Tears were streaming down Jimmy's face. "Can you tell us about one of these children?" "Lucas was 5 when I met him," Ryan said, his voice becoming tender. "Brain cancer. Couldn't speak anymore, but he could still smile. I spent an hour doing magic tricks next to his hospital bed, and every illusion made him light up with this incredible joy that reminded everyone in the room that he was still a child who loved surprises." Ryan paused, gathering himself to continue. "Lucas died 6 weeks later, but his parents told me he dreamed about magic tricks until the end. He would move his hands in his sleep like he was making coins disappear, like he was creating magic even while he was dying." "How do you handle the emotional weight of working with children who are dying?" Jimmy asked through his tears. "By remembering that these kids aren't just dying, they're still living," Ryan replied with profound wisdom. "They deserve joy, wonder, and magic right up until their last breath. My job isn't to save them, it's to make sure their final memories include laughter instead of just medical procedures." The audience was openly emotional, many people crying as they witnessed this revelation about Ryan's private work bringing magic to society's most vulnerable children. "Ryan, How has this work changed your understanding of what really matters? Jimmy asked. It's taught me that the best magic isn't about illusion, it's about creating real moments of joy for people who need them most. Ryan replied with hard-won understanding. These dying children taught me that laughter and wonder aren't luxuries, they're necessities, especially when time is running out. As the segment concluded, something unprecedented happened. The entire studio audience sat in profound silence for nearly 2 minutes before erupting in sustained applause that transcended appreciation. It was recognition of love in its purest form, acknowledgement that they had witnessed someone using their gifts to ensure that dying children experienced magic instead of just medicine in their final moments. Ryan's revelation became one of the most moving Tonight Show segments in the program's history, inspiring conversations about pediatric palliative care, the importance of preserving childhood wonder during serious illness, and the healing power of bringing joy to life's darkest moments. Most importantly, Ryan's disclosure had shown that sometimes the greatest magic happens not on movie screens, but at hospital bedsides where dying children learn that wonder and laughter can coexist with suffering, that their final chapters can still include moments of pure, beautiful magic.